Hi, my name is Dr. Jim Fogarty, and this is about eternity and sweetness. I had a grandmother that was probably the sweetest Irish Catholic woman I've ever met in my absolute life. When I was 16, she was dying. Problem was, I didn't know it. She would go in the hospital and get rejuvenated, come out and be fine, so that's what I thought she was doing. And so the last time I talked to her, I didn't know it was going to be the last time. She said to me, "Jimmy, you probably think I'm old." And I said, "Well, Graham, you're 90 years old, you're old." She said, "Well, it doesn't matter if you're 9 or 90. Doesn't matter at all. When you're at where I'm at right now, it feels like 10 minutes. Your whole life feels like 10 minutes. And I didn't get it, but I got it later. She was about to die, and she could feel eternity. And she could feel it, and she could feel it well. Now, she had a sweetness that was incredible. Let me tell you a story. When she died, a couple days later, we had the visitation. We call it a wake, we're Irish. And so what happened was, a big, huge man walked in, dusty and dirty, in overalls and a hat. I'd say cap. And so what happened is he's sitting there on a chair, actually a love seat, and kind of filled it. And he's looking at my grandmother, who's in the next room. And he's sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. So my mother goes to him and says, "Did you know Mrs. Fogarty?" He goes, "Yes, I did." And he said, "How'd you know Mrs. Fogarty?" He goes, "Well, I sell vegetables and I go from house to house and nobody ever opens up their door for me. But I went to Mrs. Fogarty's house and she opened up her door for me. And she had me come in. She looked over my vegetables. She brought them into the kitchen. She looked them all over and she started saying, 'I'm going to take this,' and she ended up taking all of them. She said, 'Sit down.' And she started to cook with my vegetables and a bunch of other stuff. And when we got done, she had this huge dinner for me at lunchtime. And so we ate and we laughed and we ate and we talked and we ate and we had a great time. So when I left, I sold all my vegetables. I had money in my pocket. I had this incredible dinner. And I also had a very nice talk for a couple hours with the sweetest woman I've ever met in my life. This stranger showed up and just cried his eyes out. What did she have? She had a sweetness. Now, you may know folks who don't have a sweetness. And I was one of them at one time who didn't have a sweetness as well. Now I'm being told I'm too nice a lot of times, you know. And sometimes I can be taken wrong, as if you can get manipulated. I can firm up when somebody's manipulating me. But I do like to be nice to people and try to do things for them based on what she taught me. Some people are afraid to ask me, "Why are you a Catholic?" That's why. That's why. This feeling's a whole lot better than that self-centered crap I had when I was younger. It was garbage. You know, instead of going after another dysfunctional relationship or a drug, and I didn't do drugs, but drink, I did pretty good drinking, especially in college. Instead of going after all that junk, you know, this kind of thing, to think that's going to get better, but it just creates more and more and more complications and makes people more depressed and more upset and more wounded. All you got to do is turn to Jesus. Now, somebody might turn to Jesus just before they died. People say, "Did they make it?" Some Catholics might say no. I say yes. I think they made it. If they are sincere, I believe that they made it. Now, we need to do it before then so we can do a lot of work for Jesus Christ. But could you imagine at the last minute being the father of someone like he is to us? And the last minute he turns away from all the gunk, or she turns away from all this gunk and looks at Jesus and says, "I want you," just before they die. That's got to be one of the best feelings a father could ever feel. And I believe it happens. I do believe it happens. If it's sincere, I believe it happens. And I think what happens to folks too is just before they die, they feel that eternity. So go to eternity filled with a sweetness for doing good for others in just all kinds of ways. Don't ask for one thing back. And you know, my grandmother never preached a thing to me, but she put so many thoughts in my head that I didn't suspect. When I got older, they all came out, and you'll do the same for those of you that you love the most, especially your kids and your grandkids. God bless. Take care. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Go do some sweetness. Go do a kindness. Take care.